This is Perth Tonight with Chris Ilsley on 882 6PR. The voice of Perth.
One of those moments, Halloween night, as we've mentioned, and it's where people get to dress up like ghouls and do all sorts of spooky stuff. Probably a good excuse for God knows how many kids to slip out, get themselves some free lollies. Well, I thought as part of Halloween we could look at something that's, well, a little bit spooky. I don't know, have you ever seen those paranormal type shows? People go into places. You see a lot of it in Europe, places like that. UK is really popular. They'll go into some castle that's been there for 1,000 years and supposedly it's haunted, and sometimes people stay in there overnight, scare the hell out of each other and all the rest of it, and come away and they have a discussion about what was there and what wasn't there and what can be explained and what can't be explained. Well, we have, I suppose, what we might call our own paranormal hunters here in Perth. And the funny thing is, they don't look like crazy guys. You know the old line, they look just like you and me. So if you think that we're going to talk to some crazy people, trust me, we're not. We've got Andrew. Good evening, mate.
How's it going?
Yeah, good. Darren.
G'day.
And Ivan.
How are you, Chris? Happy Halloween, and thanks for having us in.
Oh, it's a pleasure, and thank you very much for coming in. The one question I have to ask you guys, and I'm going to ask you first, Ivan, what on earth possessed you to get involved in all this kind of stuff?
Well, it was one of those things that we didn't realise that all three of us had an interest in, watching the shows, watching the shows on TV and that. We all had an interest in it, but didn't realise that we all were interested. Yeah. So one day we were sitting around Andrew's house and having a couple of beers, and we got chatting about it. And we come up with this crazy idea that, hey, why don't we go out there and start filming our own videos and trying to capture paranormal evidence here in Perth. In WA, we've got so many historical places that have such a story to tell. So that's really where it all started.
Darren, are you the kind of guys who would get into psychics and stuff like that, or are you completely different?
No, we're pretty much skeptics. So we are basically after hard
evidence. If you're skeptics, what got you involved in this, or is it all about?
It's about questions. We all had our own questions and we wanted answers. So that's how it all came about. And as we go along, we get some answers, but we seem to get more questions as we go along.
Did you start it more from the point of view that you thought it was crock?
Not really. No, I think we've all got our own beliefs. What's great about our group here, we all have our own different opinions, and we respect everyone else's opinions as well. I think it's more that we're not psychic, we're not clairvoyant, we're not claiming to be. We're walking into these locations and trying to capture evidence scientifically. So if we can go into a location that's reputably haunted and come out with scientific evidence to back that claim, then we look at that and go, hey, that's pretty cool.
Are there some people who would argue, hey, you just can't do this scientifically, it's not possible?
Well, I'll give you one example. This is one of my favourite pieces of evidence, playing a digital recorder. So we might be in a room and we'll be talking just like we are now. We've got a digital recorder running. And when we play that recorder back, sometimes we may catch a voice. Now, it's called an EVP, electronic voice phenomena. So if it's just you and me, Chris, say in a room, just us two, and we're talking, and we're playing a digital recorder, and then we play that recorder back later and we catch a female voice in the recording, well, then you would safely say, hey, there was no female in the room. It was just you and me. In our opinion, that's pretty cool evidence.
You've encountered that?
Oh, plenty of times.
Yeah. And we'll even get it where it's an intelligent response, where it will actually answer us a direct question. And that's when
you mean like asking you what's 2 plus 2, and it will actually say 4.
But we won't hear it at the time. We will not hear it at the time. It's actually imprinted somehow, and that's another question that we have.
See, the interesting thing here is you said digital recorder. If you'd talked to me about an old-fashioned tape recorder,
I'd say... It should work on tape as well.
Yeah, but I would say, that could possibly be... The technical term is print-through, right, from a previous recording. But when you're talking about digital, that's a different bag of snakes, because digital operates in a completely different format. And the thing is, if you overwrite something digitally, you're not going to hear a sound in the background because it doesn't work. You could do with tape, and it could be a residual from a previous recording on tape, not digital, because they work in a completely different format. So I found the fact that you mentioned digital quite interesting.
Well, when we catch this evidence that we believe, we're shocked as well, because we're in the room. We go, hey, where did that voice come from?
And one of the best ones we caught was at the Freo prison, and we had a piano playing. Now, we didn't hear it at the time.
A piano
played about, 5 or 6 notes. And it wasn't until later we realised that probably about 100 metres away in the chapel, there is actually a piano there. But we'd heard through our recorder a piano playing. We caught it.
Nobody was playing the piano?
No one else was there.
So we're investigating around the cells. Darren's recording, because we create videos. We share them on our Facebook page, Paranormal Hunters. We like to share our investigations with people and hope they enjoy it. Now, we're investigating near the cells and we're talking, and in the actual footage, there's no piano. There's no piano playing. But when we played the recorder back, we had a piano playing. Now, we did have a few comments, people saying, someone's phone was left on, which, look, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I can guarantee you that none of our phones are on and none of us have a piano ringtone. But it was a straight-out EVP. It was like an imprint of the past. So we do capture two different sorts of evidence. One is sort of like a residual sound, a sound that's happened from the past. We call that residual. And then sometimes you can have an intelligent haunting where, like Darren was saying before, you get a direct answer to a question.
How do you explain this scientifically? Yeah, there'll be somebody saying, yeah, I can hear what you're saying, but it sounds like voodoo to me. How do you explain what you're talking about? You mentioned that you like to take a scientific approach where possible, and you sort of like to move away from I know it sounds vague, but I'm going to use the term the hocus-pocus aspect of the whole thing, and you like to look at it from a scientific aspect. How do you explain something like that in a scientific sense?
We don't know. We don't understand it ourselves. It happens, but we can't explain it. We try to get answers ourselves. But how it happens, possibly it's just energy in the air and spirits are able to manipulate that energy. We don't have that answer, but it's something we catch.
One of those things, that's the beauty of this field, and I think that's why we're so attracted to it, guys, isn't it?
We're always learning.
No one really has the answers. No. So if we go into a location and, we call them personal feelings. Everyone's had those feelings where their hairs raise up on their arms, they get goosebumps, they just feel like the wind's been knocked through them. We get those personal experiences, but you can't really document that. But the digital recorder is just one piece of evidence that we capture. There's others.
Show other people.
That we can show other people.
You make this, and you've said several times, the term you've used, if you don't mind me quoting, is energy. How do you measure this energy?
Well, we've got devices that can do that as well. So we have EMF detectors that can measure electromagnetic fields in the air. Basically, How
do you distinguish those electromagnetic fields in the air? For example, in this radio station here.
There's heaps.
I'd hate to imagine I could explain just about every electromagnetic field generated. How do you ascertain, for want of a better word, the here and now from the then?
Well, I mean, with that electromagnetic field, if we're in a location that has no electricity plugged into the whole building, because a lot of these buildings are very old, there's no electricity built into these buildings, or it's been disconnected a long time ago. So if we do catch something, nothing's ever guaranteed that we catch it, and that is definitely a spirit creating that, by all means. It's just another tool that we use to say there's something possibly here.
We talk about what you've heard. We've talked about arguably what you've measured. Have you seen anything?
I've seen movement.
Yeah, the funny thing is when you're in these places, like we've investigated quite a lot of historical places in Perth, Fremantle Prison, the Fremantle Roundhouse.
See, Fremantle Prison and places like Roundhouse and places that had dark histories, places that were mental asylums. Obviously, Fremantle Prison, not only were people incarcerated there, people were also executed there. You kind of get that just the environment would make the place creepy.
Definitely. I think we actually just recently came back from Albany. We did the Albany jail. And like I was saying before, we've been to quite a lot of places in Perth, but that was actually the one place I think we were looking at each other, guys, and going, don't leave me alone. This place gives me the creeps. Now,
was it more so than Fremantle?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
definitely.
surprisingly. Yeah. And what you were saying before, Chris, you know how you were saying that, okay, we might measure, we might get a reading on our EMF detector. But if we get a reading on our EMF detector and we catch an EVP, then all of a sudden you've got two pieces of evidence then that marry up to go, well, hey, maybe something is going on here.
But at no stage do we say that is definitely a spirit there. It's just grabbing all this information and trying to make a story out of it.
You know what I'm getting out of talking to you guys? Just about every time you do something, you almost inevitably create more questions.
Yes, that's what's
than you
happening.
get answers.
Yes.
Well, Andrew,
How frustrating is that? I mean, lots of people do things and they say, well, I'm going to go out and I'm going to find the answers. What you're effectively doing in many cases is saying, I would like to find some answers, but what I'm really doing is creating a whole bunch of questions.
Well, everyone has the what if, like what happens when you die? What does happen? I mean, everyone's got their personal beliefs, and we're not out to change anyone's belief. I think we are for the skeptics. We create videos on our page.
Well, I guess skeptics either believe you or they don't. I mean, that's fine. Regardless of where you sit, if you're a skeptic, you're taking a position, you're taking a viewpoint, and that's fine.
But like Andrew, when Andrew started out with us, you were quite sceptical, Andrew, about the whole thing. You wanted to come along and check it out.
I came along. I was very skeptic.
If you were skeptical, why did you get involved in the first place?
Because I always had an interest in it. Like, I used to watch TV shows on Foxtel, and
Even though you were skeptical?
even though I was skeptical.
Because they're fun to watch.
Because I've never
Because-
actually heard or seen anything with my own two ears.
The reason why I'm asking you that, Andrew, is because I've seen shows where skeptics have gone along, and the motivation for the skeptics to go along and say, well, I think this is a crock. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go along with you guys to prove that it's a crock. And I sort of wondered if that was your motivation, but obviously it wasn't. There was,
No, my
there was a
motivation
little
was-
bit more of an interest in it.
Yeah, I got a huge interest in it.
Do you remember Fremantle Prison?
The Fremantle Prison.
When you heard that voice with
Yes,
your own ears, that's when you
actually heard the
changed.
voice.
That's when you
my own two ears. There was no device, no nothing, and
It was just you and another girl, and you heard another male voice.
had a security guard with us, and she heard the voice as well. A distinct no, and from there my passion just grew.
Do you ever talk to people, like, for example, those who worked there or who did work there, people who've arguably got a story? For example, somebody who might years ago have been a guard at Fremantle Prison, long since retired, got a few stories. Oh, mate, I can tell you some stories about what happened there. You ever spoken to people who've worked in different areas that are supposedly haunted or been to different places that are haunted?
Well, we'd love to hear people's stories. Sometimes when we go into these locations, we get let in there, and some people don't want to talk. There may be other reasons why they don't want to say anything, because we publicise everything on our page. But look, we love hearing stories. We're all for listening to stories.
Well, it's
also
all about
other
the
people's
history.
opinions. We are very much motivated by our history here in WA, and that's a big part of what we do as well.
So we need to listen to those stories.
We're not just about a group going into a location trying to ghost bust. We actually are trying to learn the history as we go.
Yep.
And if we catch paranormal evidence along the way that backs up that history, that's even better. That's even better, because I'll tell you a quick story, Chris. We were at the Roundhouse, the Fremantle Roundhouse, and it's on our video, on our page. Now,
What's the website before we go any further?
Paranormal Hunters.
.com.au.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it is, yes.
Beautiful.
Darren's our tech man, so...
I should know these things.
So basically, Chris, what happened is Darren and I were in one of the cells there at the Fremantle Roundhouse, and we walk into the cell, and clear as day, I hear boots walking on the roof, on timber, on the timber roof there. And I caught it on my recorder, and sure enough, we play it back and we get boots walking on the timber roof. Now, after the fact, after our investigation, we spoke to the guide there who let us in for the night. And funny enough, if you've ever been to the Roundhouse, Chris, they've got windows up the top where
Yes.
the guards used to be.
Yes.
Now, either side, she showed us a photo, either side of that, there used to be a doorway, and the guards used to walk on top of the roof looking down at the prisoners below. So that's like a residual
So they
recording.
would go through onto the roof, and
Yeah,
then the roof
looking
actually
down.
represented part of the patrol.
Yeah, so
platform. Okay.
I personally believe we caught a residual recording of what would have happened 100-odd years ago, whenever that, when they were there doing that.
See, if we do this, and I'll take my skeptic's hat off for a moment, if we look at something like that and you say, and let's just accept for a moment on face value that has happened, you'd argue, why would you... Are you talking about something that's there now that's doing what it did 100 years ago? So for want of a better term, a ghost, call it what you will. Or are we talking about a glimpse back into the past where you're actually seeing something that happened all that time ago? Which one would you argue? More like a recording.
That one would classify as a recording, something that's in the atmosphere, in the environment. It's been captured because it's happened.
Has it remained there because it happened probably thousands of times as people went about their job?
Yep.
Or is it something that's happening in the here and now that the ghost of somebody's still doing the same job they did hundreds of years ago? Which one
that's another question. Yeah,
it's like the energy.
Trust me, my mind can go in places you don't want to go.
It's like, say for instance, something bad happens in a place. I mean, Fairbridge Village was one place we investigated, and there has been reports of some things happening there back in the days that wasn't fantastic, but it's almost like that energy absorbs in the environment and it hangs around. Now, I'm talking a little bit of my own personal belief here, so I don't expect everyone to have the same belief as this, but it's almost like that energy absorbs into that environment. It soaks into the buildings. It remains there. It remains there. And more often than not, I couldn't quite answer why we catch residual sounds and an active ghost. It just seems to be how it is, isn't it? Like it's one or the other.
Does it follow? I mean, we're talking about this and we focus on places where people have been. Does that mean that if you really wanted lots of sounds, you really wanted to hear lots of this activity, you'd go to a cemetery? Because you kind of imagine that there'd be...
Yeah, we made a bit of a pact right at the beginning. One of the first places we went to just to test what we're going to do was a cemetery. And I never liked it personally. I thought to myself,
it's a place of peace.
It's a place of rest and peace. So we made a pact after that first night not to do cemeteries because it's just out of respect.
When you talk about this, would you argue that when we talk about this, that what we're talking about are people who have people who've really had an unsettling passing?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, who knows? I mean, there's a lot of theories out there about people not being able to move on or once they pass.
Sort of interesting because all we're doing is we're actually asking more questions ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
That's what's great about this field. We're learning. Every investigation we go on, we learn something new, don't we, guys?
Yeah.
And every piece of evidence we catch, well, we believe it's evidence. That's why we put it on our page. And Darren creates videos that we put on our page, which is brilliant, and it's a way of sharing our investigations. It's like a bit of a summary of our night. And we like to think that we're WA's own paranormal hunters out there creating videos for the public to enjoy.
Well, that's what they are. Paranormalhunters.com.au is the website. Andrew, Darren and Ivan. If you'd like to have a chat to them, give us a buzz, 922 11882. We'll take some calls in just a moment.
This is Perth Tonight with Chris Ilsley.
Andrew, Darren and Ivan are the Paranormal Hunters. By the way, the website is paranormalhunters.com.au. You ever had some sort of experience, encountered something that you couldn't explain, that you found rather spooky? No, it's one of those times when you look at something and there is a question there. The question probably remains. That's the whole point. These boys are just spending their lives creating multiple questions. Hello, Yvonne.
Hi, good evening, gentlemen.
Thank you.
How are you?
G'day.
Back in the 80s, I used to work in the Tarantella nightclub in Mowat Street that used to be the old German embassy. There was a rumour that there was a sailor back in the old days that was killed in the bath there. And to cut a long story short, we used to turf people out at 3 a.m. back in those days. I assumed everyone was gone, and we looked across, and in the archway there in Tarantella's, there was a gentleman standing there in a blue flannel, navy, old-time sailor suit.
Wow.
And I can still see his face today.
That's incredible, isn't it?
So we hear people's stories like that, but we have yet to have our own experience like that, have we?
Well, to catch it on camera.
So did you actually see this for yourself, did you, Yvonne?
I did, yes, because I actually said to one of the bouncers, hang on a minute, there's still one left to go. And he said, don't be a dill, Yvonne, there's not. I said, have a look. And he was there. He was standing there. And when the leaf
Did he leave when you said, hey, it's 3 o'clock, sunshine, you've got to get out of here?
Last drinks.
Yeah, but when the lease changed, we always knew something was going to happen. One night we had people sitting out in the main area, and a load of plaster fell from the ceiling, and we knew he wasn't happy that the lease was changing. So I wouldn't go downstairs to the cellar to get any wine out. Bugger that lot.
That's the holy grail of...
I was going to say, I wonder how the patrons thought, well, you can go thirsty. I'm not going down to the cellar.
I tell you what, not even some of them would go down
Really?
there. No, because the story
So what was the name of this place again?
It was called Tarantellas. It was a nightclub, a rough one we used to call the Golden Gloves, in Mowat Street. It now, I think, belongs to the university there. But back
It's
in
part
those
of
days,
Notre Dame, is it?
And from what we were all told, it used to be the German embassy back in the early 1900s.
Okay.
And a sailor
Plenty of
was
history.
killed in the bath.
Yeah.
Yes.
Plenty of history. That's the holy grail sort of evidence that, I mean, we're yet to capture it, but I reckon when we do, it will be a high five moment of actually capturing an apparition.
You sure you'll capture it? Gee, that would have... Thank you very much for that, Yvonne. That would have scared the hell out of people, though. Although, do they necessarily... I mean, we have this assumption, I suppose you see something like that be unsettling, but are we right to assume that somebody who's there is going to be pretty annoyed about the fact that you're there? You know, there's always... I suppose, a bit like the argument with aliens. You know, if aliens came to Earth, would they be friendly or would they want to eat you? I'm going for eat you. I reckon we'd be lunch. Hello, Janet.
Good evening, gentlemen. My story is I used to work at the surgeon's house, 3 houses up from the Fremantle prison, within the last 10 years. And I was in the far north room at the top story, and I could hear pots and pans from the very south room on the basement. And I'm a skeptic, and I thought, and it kept going for a good 5 minutes. All these pots and pans going for it. So we don't even have kitchens down there. That was one story. Then another story, I took pictures when I went on a tour of the prison, and 2 pictures, you just could not edit it, you couldn't do anything, you couldn't print it, you couldn't do anything with it. It was only 2 pictures, and it wasn't where they hung people, and...
That's at the Fremantle prison?
Yes, and the piano room, the church.
Yep.
That was the other picture that refused to work. It was there, but we couldn't print it, we couldn't edit it, we couldn't do anything.
We've had a lot of stories about that sort of thing, haven't we? Where devices just play up for no reason whatsoever.
Remember the time the camera just turned off on itself, Andrew?
Never done
you were running the camera, we were filming.
Private house, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it just turned off.
Battery just went gone.
Yeah.
And I've got one more story.
Yeah, go for it.
At the prison, just blanked out. I'm sorry.
No worries.
All right.
No,
just
but
blanked
the Fremantle
out.
prison is a very creepy place.
Before I forget, one of my colleagues told us a story and said he was talking to a client outside of the surgeon's house, and in his peripheral vision, he saw 3 people, one lady in Victorian dress and a bonnet, and the other 2 were military-type, old-style military clothing that they were wearing, and it was so vivid to my colleague, he actually said, do you mind, because they were talking, these 3 people were talking, according to him, and he said, turned to them and said, excuse me, do you mind, I'm talking to this person, and the person that my colleague was talking to said, what's wrong with you? Who are you talking to? But I don't know if that's true or not, but it sounded feasible, but I'm a skeptic.
Well, that's fair enough, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much for that, Janet. Hello, Lily.
Hello. Down at the Esplanade, we had a weekend there, and just sitting there in the room, and the spoon... We had a little spoon there where you have the little table, and it just sort of like stood up straight.
Like a spoon?
Oh, great. Imagine catching that on camera.
I've actually got it on my phone.
That gives a whole new meaning to the term, and the dish ran away with the spoon.
That's fantastic.
What was that all about?
We have literally
I don't know if
thousands
these blokes can provide you with an answer, but I can tell you this much, Lily. I'm looking at them and they're extremely happy.
We actually have thousands of dollars worth of equipment that we take, and it takes us hours to set up and then another couple of hours to bring it back down at the end of the night. And we just don't seem to catch that sort of amazing evidence. Unfortunately,
One day we
try
will.
hard.
One day
we try
we will,
hard.
but-
Yeah,
I have got it on my camera phone.
brilliant. Well,
We'd love to see that.
yeah, definitely.
Okay. Well,
Can you email it? Because, by the way, Lily, it's just paranormalhunters.com.au, and you can send the boys.
Yeah, I think there's a contact form or something there. Yeah.
There's a contact form there. Send the boys a message on the contact form, and they'll arrange to get a look at the photo.
I'd love to see that.
'Cause
yes.
I can tell you right now, they'd like to see the photo. Thank you very much for that, Lily. There's got to be a whole heap of stuff out there. Apart from the Albany Jail, in the Perth metropolitan area, boys, what's the most haunted place?
Woodman Point.
Yeah,
Without
Woodman
doubt.
Point Quarantine Station. So are you familiar with that place? at
I
all?
know the place. Yeah, I'm familiar with it. I know where it is.
We were invited down there by the president to do an investigation at the old isolation hospital, and that included the crematorium and the old shower block. Yeah. And that experience is one I think will stay with all of us for a long time.
Definitely.
Hey, guys.
Definitely.
Kind of stuff you won't forget. Hey, listen, look at the time. Runs away with us, guys. Been an absolute... Look, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Enjoyed that. When you come by something, you got some photographic evidence, you must come back.
Definitely.
We've got to have a chat. Now, I'll tell you right now, I'm a skeptic, but I describe myself as a skeptic with an open mind.
Yeah, that's healthy. That's healthy.
So hopefully that paranormalhunters.com.au. And once again, Andrew, Darren and Ivan, thanks for coming in.
No, thank you for having
Thanks,
us.
Chris.
Thanks for having us, Chris.